in this video, we're going to uncover how perfectionism is going to limit your game. Hey there, I'm Eli Straw, mental performance coach and the founder of SuccessStartsWithin.com. Do you think this need to be perfect helps you because it pushes you to train harder? Do you think that striving for perfection will surely allow you to, stumble to greatness? Maybe it will. But more likely than not, it's going to hold you back during games, with the main reason being the tension caused by perfectionism going into games, along with how difficult it is to manage mistakes and respond to them in a positive and productive way as a perfectionist whenever you play. So let's start with the tension caused by perfectionism. Now, to play your best, you need to let go and accept the possibility of mistakes. And not only the possibility, but the probability as well. Because we know that mistakes, some big and some small, are likely going to happen every single game. And you need to be able to move on quickly in order to play your best. Something that is very, very difficult when you're dealing with perfectionism. But even before you make a mistake, the thought of these mistakes can cause tension. If your goal going into a game is to play perfectly, then it can be easy to have your main focus be on avoiding mistakes. Since mistakes are going to indicate a lack of perfection, they need to be avoided at all costs. Unfortunately, the cost is playing well. Now, I know it may seem strange that the goal of not making mistakes will actually increase your chances of making mistakes, but the truth is when you demand perfection from yourself, you play more tight and tense. There's a lot of stress present, hoping not to mess up, finding yourself falling short of perfection. Now, this level of stress causes tension, which holds you back during games. Perfectionism and anxiety are going to go hand in hand, because when you demand perfection from yourself, the future will be on your mind a lot. And when you're going into a game or during a game, you will think about what's going to happen. And you're often going to think about how you can't make any mistakes. Now, one football player I worked with kept himself from playing freely due to the tension he felt as a result of perfectionism. He's a wide receiver and he ran routes with less intent and often hoped for the ball not to be thrown to him because he was afraid of making a mistake. Yes, he wanted to play perfectly, but in doing so, he was more focused on avoiding mistakes than making nice catches and increasing his chances of scoring a touchdown. Another athlete I worked with, a dancer, limited her skills during performances due to perfectionism. Now, she worked incredibly hard in her training, fine-tuning her moves and her skills. She knew them all really well, and she could perform them as close to perfect as was possible when no one was watching. But when it came to her performance, she became more tense, hoping not to mess up. And now another reason that this perfectionism is going to limit you is because it limits the way that you respond to mistakes. Because in addition to causing you to play tense, perfectionism is also going to really wreak havoc when you make a mistake during a game, and specifically on your ability to bounce back from those mistakes. Now, you and I both know that mistakes are going to happen. They are natural, and honestly, they can be a great way to learn and improve. But if you demand perfection from yourself, what do you think mistakes mean? They mean you weren't perfect. Now, there was one young softball player that I was working with who really experienced the difficulties of perfectionism in relation to making mistakes firsthand. She expected herself to play perfectly each and every day. Now, this meant having perfect at-bats, playing perfect defense, and pitching perfectly. She could not stand making mistakes. Perfectionism made it difficult for her to let go of mistakes and to move on quickly. Now, when you make a mistake during a game, the mistake is no longer your concern. It happened, and it is in the past. Your main focus needs to be to put yourself in the best position to make the next play. But when you're dealing with perfectionism, you get stuck fixating on and going over the mistake that you just made, as if thinking about this mistake is somehow going to change the fact that you messed up. Not being able to let go of a mistake and refocus due to perfectionism is really where we see one mistake quickly turn into many more. Have you ever experienced the snowball effect, where you have one bad at bat and all of a sudden you're 0 for 5 that day, or you have a bad first race and then you see the rest of your races continue to go downhill? This is common among perfectionist athletes. Since one mistake means you weren't perfect, it's easy to get down on yourself, feel like a failure, have your confidence drained, and then lose motivation to refocus and play your best for the remainder of that game or for the next game. Now, another aspect of making mistakes is learning from mistakes. Now, I'm sure that you've had coaches tell you that mistakes are great teachers, but how well have you been listening to them? No, not your coaches, but mistakes. Do you allow mistakes to help you improve? Or do you run from mistakes like the plague and are terrified of making them out of fear of not being perfect? During a game, if you don't beat yourself up after a mistake, you could honestly learn something very valuable that will help you make an adjustment moving forward within that game. Let's think about the softball player that I mentioned earlier. By learning how to manage mistakes better, she gained the ability to make quick adjustments between at-bats. If she was too out in front of her on her previous at-bat, instead of just beating herself up over this, she simply focused on timing up the pitcher better and waiting back next time that she was up. In addition to learning mid-game, you also want to use mistakes to help you learn after games. Just think, if every single game you took away something that you could use the following week to improve, how much better do you think you would be by the end of the season? How much better do you think you would be in a year or so? However, when you demand perfection from yourself, you aren't concerned with getting better in the future. You are worried about being perfect today. Now, that right there is the main difference between using mistakes to learn and grow and having mistakes hold you back and become something that you fear. Perfectionist athletes need to be perfect today. So mistakes should become something that they should fear, since mistakes indicate they weren't perfect. Then what can happen is the fear of failure develops. So the very desire to be perfect may be the thing keeping you from playing as well as you can. So I want you to think about this. Do you want to be as good as you'll ever be today? Or do you want to keep improving, getting better and better with each day and every week? I imagine you want the second option. But with perfectionism, you're choosing the first. If you demand perfection from yourself, that's it. You've reached the top of the mountain, and you are as good as you're going to get. But since your true goal is to keep improving as a player, you need to let go of this demand to be perfect. To help you let go of perfectionism as an athlete, I've made this other video that goes into detail on how you can let go and overcome perfectionism in sports. So go ahead and click on that video to learn those strategies.